Good evening, everyone. Welcome and thank you so much for joining us for our second to last regularly scheduled garden hour. Where in the world did the summer go? It's great to be back and see everyone. Again, I am your host for tonight, Kristine Lang. I'm an extension consumer horticulture specialist. And joining me are two of our favorite longtime panelists and one of our favorite hosts, as well as a new face joining us for her Garden Hour debut. So I want to give a warm welcome to Joslyn Foussart, who is an agronomy and a horticulture research assistant at the SDSU Southeast Farm. And she's also one of my lovely graduate students. So Joslyn, what are you going to be talking about tonight?
I'm going to be talking about the cabbage research that's going on out at the research farm.
Awesome. We look forward to hearing more about your cabbage work, Joslyn. And I think we're all going to be excited to hear from Laura Edwards, our state climatologist tonight, because I don't know about you, but weather's definitely been on my brain. So Laura, what are you going to be talking about?
Yep, I'll give a late summer update on the climate so far this season and outlook for the rest of the season into the winter.
Awesome. Is it going to be cooler?
I can't spoil it for you right now.
Okay. All right.
You got to stick around for it.
We'll be on the edge of our seats. And we also look forward to hearing from our pesticide education specialist and urban entomologist, Dr. Amanda Bachman. So what's on the agenda tonight, Amanda?
I have, of course, some interesting bugs to talk about and some upcoming events, and also where to find out where the monarchs are this time of year.
Awesome. I know I've been seeing some monarchs, so I look forward to hearing how we can track them. All right. Just as a reminder for everybody, as questions come up for any of our panelists, please feel free to put those in the Q&A box, and I'll be monitoring those and sending those along to our panelists after they get done giving us all of their lovely updates. So without further ado, Joslyn, I'm going to pivot to you and let you share your screen and introduce yourself.
Okay, can everyone see that? Is it in? Oh, there we go. Is that working?
That looks great. Thank you, Joslyn.
Sounds good. So I did my best to come up with a fun title. So I named it Some Plantastic Information on Cabbage. So it's kind of interesting that I get to start my master's with cabbage research, because I originally grew up on a family vegetable farm in Alberta, Canada, and my grandpa started the farm by growing cabbage. So that's kind of fun. So out at the Southeast Research Farm, I selected 3 different varieties to kind of look into. And so on the far left, it is the Ferrero, and then the middle is Famosa, and then the far right is Diodon. And you can kind of see some holes on the leaves and such, because I've been having quite a few issues with cabbage loopers and cabbage worms this year. And we did not do row covers this year because we wanted to kind of test out some beneficial flower guard rows, which you'll kind of see in the next pictures coming up. And these images were also taken yesterday. So these are kind of what they're gonna look like. The photos are from Johnny's Selected Seed, which is where we got the seeds from. And these cabbage, in like the previous picture, they were transplanted on July 21st. And so far in the research, I've noticed a lot of like cabbage elongating and such in like the no-till clover, which I'll kind of get to more. But the most interesting thing for me was when I did stand counts about 2 weeks after they were transplanted. The Famosa, I only had to replace 3, with the Ferrero needing 23 replaced and the Diodon 20. So it's not necessarily something you can like bank on. It's just an interesting thing I kind of noticed as this is like the first year of the research. So, oh yeah, I was gonna go over like all the maturities and such. So I did like an early, a middle, and a late maturity. So the Ferrero is a 65-day, and then the Famosa is 81, and the Diodon is 105. And then they all kind of have different head sizes and such. But then the other interesting part was the different like resistances. So the Ferrero didn't really have any disease resistance traits, but it was noted as like slow to split. And then the Famosa was resistant to downy mildew, while the Diodon is supposed to be resistant to Fusarium yellows. So here is kind of an overview picture of what it looks like out at the field there. You can see the guard row flowers, and then you can see that there's fabric out there, and there's like strips where the clover is higher up, and that's the no-till strips that I was noticing the cabbage elongating in. And so basically out at the research farm, we have 4 whole blocks, and then within that, there's another 4 sub blocks within each whole block. And those have, like you can see in the far left corner, that's bare ground. And then we have a red clover, a white clover, and a Kira white clover cross. And then within that, we have 4 other treatments. So then there's tilled fabric, tilled no fabric, no-till, which is the clover one, like directly planted into, and then no-till fabric. And it's really interesting to kind of see the differences and like the yield impacts and such, because clover offers like the nitrogen ability within the soil. And then also we're utilizing landscape fabric instead of plastic, because a lot of producers are trying to kind of work their way towards more sustainable and more economical ways of farming and raising their produce. So the first thing that I kind of wanted to go over was like key things to know when you need, like for harvesting cabbage. So a lot of people will first think about harvesting cabbage when it like reaches the desired size, but then you also need to make sure that the heads feel firm to pressure, but not too firm, because if it's too firm after cutting it, it would be prone to like cracking, and that's not a feature that you want in your cabbage. And then you also need to kind of pay attention to the cooler temperatures enhancing flavor, which now that I think about it, it'll be really interesting to see how all 3 of my harvest dates are going to vary with their enhanced flavor profiles, because with the Ferrero being ready way before the Diodon, there's probably going to be some really different flavor profiles. And then a lot of other sources I've seen, they recommended harvesting during cooler temperatures, because cabbage, if you harvest it like on a day like today, 100-degree day, it's not going to be happy. You're going to get a lot of wilting and waste for the leaves and such. And then according to Dr. Rhoda Burrows, she said that on her website, she has a paper written up on it a bit. And she said, sorry, I got lost with my notes. She said, cabbage heads can be harvested once they reach the desired size and the heads feel firm to pressure, depending somewhat on variety. So that's a key point that I didn't really know about. And then again, she mentioned like the sweetness with flavor and such. So sometimes delaying harvest into the fall leads to a better product, which you'll want to think about that if you're like bringing it to markets and such. So I also wanted to touch on like USDA cabbage grading and kind of go over a bit of a summary of that. So there's some like general grading requirements that both grades will fall into and under. So it is important to notice that like size is not a requirement. So I actually went to Hy-Vee and took a picture of this cabbage on a shelf, and you can see that there's all different sizes, but there's still equal amounts of like damage and varietal traits within that is being offered to consumers. And then again, the head needs to be firm, not puffy, because if it's puffy, it means the leaves are like looser, not as tight packed, and they're going to get a lighter head. And then they also need to be free from soft rot and seed stems. And then you do not want discoloration, freezing damage, disease, insect, or mechanical damage. So then specifically, there's also stem length, because when you pull back those wrapper leaves and you cut the cabbage at the base, you want to cut to no more than 1/2 inch past the leaf, the base of the leaf attachment. And then you have like those wrapper leaves that are around the main head of the cabbage. And basically in general, all cabbage needs to be well trimmed, which is no more than 4 wrapper leaves. And then for the US #1 green grade and red grade, they need to be fairly well trimmed, which is no more than 7 wrapper leaves. And then now we're going to get into more of the specific grading requirements because there's like 2 categories. And on this image, you can see the wrapper leaves that are like holding where the heads are like beginning to form in the cabbage. So for, oh man, I can't see the title, but I think it's US #1. No more than 10% by weight of the heads in any lot may fail to meet the general requirements. So that's like the requirements we just kind of discussed. And then within that 10%, no more than 2% may have the soft decay. And then your level under that is the commercial, and that has a bit more leeway with 25% by weight of heads in any lot they are permitted to fail to meet the general requirements. But then within that, there's still restrictions of no more than 10 may have any like damage that's causing serious damage. And again, no more than 2% having soft decay, which is really important. So these are some general characteristics to kind of consider that they go, like if you're shipping to like a wholesaler or something, then they're gonna like kind of look through the bins and kind of do a like a scan or kind of a checklist of things, and they'll take a certain amount of cabbage heads per pound that they receive. And these are the different things that they're looking for. And one thing that I thought was really interesting was the seed stems, which was mentioned on the general requirements. They're really strict on that as well, because a lot of grocery stores or people trying to sell to the public will want to cut the cabbage in half. And if you see those little seed stems kind of growing in there and have the head like kind of getting a bit looser and stuff, then consumers are way less likely to buy that. So that's why that is on there, and that's like a really key point to kind of remember as well. So these are my resources, and then yeah, that's basically everything I have. And I would love to come back and give you guys an update on this, because it's going to be really interesting to kind of see how the different varieties all pan out.
Well, wonderful, Joslyn. If anyone has questions or things you're curious about, so one of the things I want to add is Joslyn gave a lot of information that is really about commercial production. And I realize that many of the folks listening today were probably more of a home garden audience, but it might change the way that you look at that grocery store cabbage next time you're walking through the grocery store. And I appreciated Joslyn wanting to pull back the curtain to help share how, when we harvest all of that cabbage for her research project, how we're going to be trying to categorize things and think about what would be considered marketable or non-marketable if we were selling this to a produce wholesaler or selling it to a produce auction that's going to end up in a Hy-Vee or a large grocery store near you. So, Joslyn, you kind of mentioned this, that your cabbage season has not been without challenges. So do you want to talk a little bit more maybe about some of the past challenges and how you've been addressing them in an organic field?
Yeah, well, first of all, I have jackrabbits out there. I've chased a jackrabbit out at least 2 or 3 times a day. I did notice they tend to love the purple diodon, and they would just rip off the other leaves and drop them. So I'm not sure if that's just a thing with the jackrabbits over here or if that is something to consider, but that was an interesting thing I noted. And then the other thing was, yeah, the cabbage loopers, the white butterfly moths are really, really, really bad. Like I counted 13 in one whole block at one point. And then the cabbage looper moths, they're not as bad, but I am seeing the loopers on the cabbage leaves. So I would go out and just kind of crop scout once in a while, like kind of more mid-afternoon, because they start to become more active then. But I also did notice that when it got too hot, they would almost hide under the fabric and such and leave the plant, and then come back later on in the evening when it cooled off a little bit more. And then something else I've really struggled with is the watering timing, because the no-till always needs water because that clover is sucking up all that moisture away from them. And then the no-till fabric is tending to like keep a lot of moisture built up in there, because I think the fabric is like limiting the amount of like other like plant growth around it. I'm not really sure. It's just something interesting I've noticed. But then the bare ground and the tilled fabric, those are also needing a lot of water. And so there were times where when they were first transplanted, I had that water running to keep those bare grounds good. But then I was noticing some root rot possibilities happening. So I had to kind of take a step back and say, I need to find the medium level of moisture needs and just kind of work with that. So.
All right. And Joslyn, you mentioned, the ability to share your results later this winter or in the season. So I want to point out to people that the first year findings from Joslyn's report, so cabbage harvest data and more information about how those clover cover crops may have affected the cabbage harvest, that's all going to be published in the SDSU Southeast Farm Research Report. Joslyn, we have a fun question for you, and I'm not sure if you found this information in your background research or not, but Laura Edwards would really love to know, are any of the 3 varieties you're growing marked as more optimum for sauerkraut making? And maybe you don't know, and maybe we'll have to dig a little deeper.
I remember seeing a lot that were marked specifically for a sauerkraut, but a lot of them are like a savory sweet or like a peppery sweet. So I know one of them is like, so the Famosa says that it's best in cooked dishes. So that is one specification. The Ferrero is peppery sweet, and then the Diodon is sweet. So we'll have to kind of find out, but.
All right, so maybe some considerations on, how zesty you might want that sauerkraut to be.
And
so Laura, it sounds like a good next step for us is to make sauerkraut.
One thing I did forget to mention is that it's not just a focus on like the planting directly in the clover or having like the landscape fabric. The key other thing is that clover is there. We're trying to get it established to like be a living walkway and like compete with weeds so that you're not having this bare ground exposed to like the elements and losing nutrients and allowing weeds to just go in there and suck up your resources that you're trying to pump in. So.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Joslyn. I'm going to let you stop sharing your screen, and we're going to actually welcome Laura up next to tell us more about what's going on right now, but more importantly, what's going to happen. I'm still on the edge of my seat, Laura.
All right, just a few more minutes. I'll get there. Excellent. So last time I visited with you all was in June, about 2 months ago. And so with that in mind, I grabbed some data, some maps, just on what's happened since then. And so looking at temperature first, this is the departure from normal or average temperature for the last 60 days. And generally cool, the greens, blues, purples are all below average. We did have a pretty decently long cool period, or a couple of them in that time frame. But that kind of masks or kind of covers up that really hot week we had in July. And if any of you grow sweet corn, for example, that happened right at least during corn pollination for field corn and maybe just on the end of your sweet corn season. And so I know on the field corn side of things, we've started to see some issues now with empty cobs, basically no kernels pollinated. And I know some of the sweet corn that I saw that I had up here in Brown County didn't have as good a kernels as full ear as we sometimes see. So that's been kind of hit or miss, though, I think. Maybe if you have beans, I know soybeans in the field crop side have recovered quite nicely from that heat, and we've had some moisture since then, which I'll show too. Maybe it's the same for your garden beans, for green beans, and those kinds of things in your gardens as well. So the heat was short-lived, but just ill-timed, I think, in that July timeframe. And then here we are again with 100-degree temperatures for a couple of days. But I don't know how much of a factor it'll be. I know when John Ball is on the call on this webinar, he almost always talks about growing degree days, as it's a great indicator looking at how far we are in physiological or growth stage for a lot of things, including some insects and some plants and those kinds of things. And I don't know what all we would be looking for at this time of year, but I looked at a handful of stations from our South Dakota Mesonet, our weather station network, and this is a station at Pierre, actually at Dakota Lakes Research Farm, and it's about something close to 300 growing degree days or growing degree units above average for this time of year. As you can see, the green line is above the red line. Most of the locations that I grabbed, that I just kind of took a snapshot of, we're all about 200 to 300 above average for this time of year, going way back, to May, when we had a very warm period in that May-June timeframe. Just kind of held steady above average. For growing degree day calculations, in this case, that's using the base 50 temperature, and it's capped at 86. So if you have an average temperature over 86, it does not add on any more growing degree days. That's kind of reflecting like the extreme heat days that actually cause more stress, don't really contribute to good growth. For example, corn is a crop like that. So anywhere between average of 50 to 86 is what we use for this growing degree day calculator. And this is on the Mesonet website under tools and then growing degree days. On the precipitation side, I think almost everybody has been wetter than typical the last couple months, and especially the last few weeks in some areas, where the greens, blues, purples, all of those colors are above average for the last 60 days. Now, I know if any of you are up in the far northeastern corner of the state, Roberts County, Dave, Marshall, those areas actually were quite dry until really just recently, last week or so. So just goes to show you, when you get a couple inches of rain, 2 or 3 inches of rain, that can really tip the scale one way or another. And we're keeping an eye on, generally that far eastern side of the state is where we're seeing some drier spots in the orange colors, that 70 to 90% of average. And we have a couple other dry spots around the state, but generally everyone has been doing a little bit better here in this midsummer season with moisture. And that's also what we see in the U.S. Drought Monitor map. This is a map that was released last week on Thursday. So we see most of the state, most of the west, central, north central, drought-free at the current moment. But we see little areas that get worse as we get closer to the Minnesota border. Just because it's yellow or tan doesn't mean we haven't improved. Some of those areas were a category or two worse, 2 months ago. So we have seen some steady improvements in that southern, southeastern part of the state. They just kind of chip away kind of one category at a time. They don't typically make a big jump over multiple categories in drought severity in one given week. So they kind of stair step that in improvement or degradation, either way. So currently only about less than 15% of the state in some level of drought. That's that D1, the tan or orange color or worse. So looking ahead, we've gotten through the heart of the growing season. I know gardens are still flourishing with the moisture we've had and the cooler temperatures, at least up until just recently. And things have been growing pretty well. I know our lawn has gotten a few more mowings lately up here in Aberdeen and the Aberdeen area. But it looks like, along with this heat, we're going to be generally dry over the next 7 days. So this is the total rainfall forecast, just looking at one model. But you can see the white is basically 0 for total rainfall, maybe some of those favorite areas in the northern hills, you know, that kind of get a few more showers here and there than the rest of us, have a little more chance of rain, but really we're looking at a 1/4 inch or less for the next 7 days. So really pretty quiet. So message here, you know, it's pretty hot. We have some high evapotranspiration days with heat and wind at the same time. A lot of sunshine, causing a lot of evaporation, a lot of transpiration in those plants. So keep them watered. And just like the harvesting information that Joslyn shared, you know, watering often in the morning is good when it's cooler and you don't get so much evaporation as quickly. So looking out ahead, so start with kind of the near term. I showed you the 7-day rainfall forecast. Really nothing much to say there. 6 to 10 days out, this was updated just this afternoon. So looking about a week from now, more or less, really look on the left. Temperature, pretty high confidence, warmer than average for the last week, for the end of August, I should say. And same on the precipitation side, favoring dry statewide as we look at the last few days of August into September 1st. So warm and dry tends to be the story here for the next week and a half or so all across South Dakota. As we look out ahead, this would be August 30th to September 5th, so right at that transition at the end of the month to September into Labor Day. Still looking at temperatures there on the left, favoring warmer than average for this time of year. And on the right, a little bit of change in precipitation pattern where we're starting to see kind of an east-west pattern set up with wetter conditions generally over the western states, drier conditions over the central to eastern side of the country. And South Dakota is kind of straddling the middle there. And that line has kind of wavered a little bit across the state in the last couple of days, but generally this is what we're expecting as we start off September with wetter conditions in the west and generally drier in the east. So depending where you are in the state, you may see more chances of rainfall in the west. Returning again anyway. I know I've had some friends and co-workers in the Rapid City area kind of complaining it's been raining like every day and every week, and they're kind of sick of it. But yeah, it really has been unusual, the rain out there. And just a heads up, in that 8 to 14 day window on the 30th of August, if you're in the northwestern, north central part of the state, a heads up, anticipating again potentially some extreme warm temperatures for this time of year. So about 20% chance of some very extreme temperatures. So that's looking at 20% chance, basically near record heat again, returning. So that'd be about a week from today. So we're not totally done yet with the really hot days. I don't know if we'll see 100 degrees again, but you know, I don't want to promise anything. We have seen 100-degree temperatures as late as September in most parts of the state. So wouldn't be totally unheard of, but the further we get towards September, the more rare it is. So looking at September, just the month ahead, this outlook was released on Thursday of last week. So kind of piggybacking off of, running with what we've seen, what we're seeing coming up the next 2 weeks. Kind of a hint at what early September is looking to be like. And so on the left is temperature for September, slightly leaning towards warmer than average for the month ahead. And then on the precipitation side, they really backed off. There were some hints that we were going to have a wetter fall season, or leaning towards wetter in the fall season, and they've really pulled back on that. Now, equal chances, the white color means equal chances of wetter drier or near average for precipitation in September. So no real strong consensus in the models or the forecasters as far as precipitation goes in September. So what this tells me is that, leaning on the warmer side for September at least, I think we're going to get all the way, to harvest time, for the field crops at least. And looks like probably not an exceptionally early frost this year. Our frost dates tend, first frosts are in late September to early October, depending where you're at. So I don't anticipate a particularly early frost this year. Looking at the fall in general, September, October, November, pull all three of those months together. Remembering that September is leaning towards warmer. Looking at the left map here, that does not look to hold steady through the remainder of the fall season. So equal chances of warmer, cooler, or near average for temperature for the fall season overall. So could see some cooler temperatures in October, November timeframe, maybe balancing out that warmer September, but in general, doesn't really have, we don't really have a good idea consistently anyway of warmer or cooler for the fall overall. Precipitation, again, not saying a lot there. Our long-term trend in the fall season is, increasing precipitation in the fall season. So they take that into account. So we could still see some moisture, but doesn't necessarily mean will be particularly wet or dry. And so again, I think on the whole, looks like nothing really drought developing or nothing really particularly pointing towards flooding either. So we could use a nice fall, the last couple ends of the season and fall seasons, we've had some drought conditions that have held some pretty dry soils. And there's some good points to that, but sometimes we like to carry some soil moisture into the spring to get us started. So we'll see where the fall takes us. And to answer your question, Kristine, and a lot of others, this is kind of the question of the week. I think a lot of people have been asking me, what's the outlook for winter? And this is what we see right now, a very, very typical El Nino signal, El Nino pattern, I should say, over the country. And up here in the northern states, that typically means warmer than average temperatures, particularly in the later winter, say later January, February, is where we see the strongest signal of El Nino. And that generally points towards warmer than average temperatures. So I think that's good news. I'm not anticipating a severe winter in either cold temperatures or snowfall, even for that matter. When we look at the map on the right, not necessarily right over South Dakota, but to our north, does favor drier conditions in the winter season. In South Dakota, according to this official outlook, equal chances of wetter, drier, or near average for snow or precipitation, I should say, in general. So, I'm not anticipating a real heavy snow year, real heavy precipitation year for the winter season coming up. So, the one thing just that I would keep an eye on, given the leaning towards warmer temperatures, sometimes that can lead to some more ice or freezing rain events or snow coming and then melting a little earlier, that kind of thing. So that's the only thing, is looking at that mixed precipitation. But, every winter we're going to see some cold temperatures. So for sure we'll have some cold, and hopefully we get some snowfall to help with covering some of our winter wheat and some of those other overwintering grasses that we like to keep protected from freeze damage. So I just wanted to share an update on the mesonet quick and just the last minute here. The crew has, with the mesonet, with the weather station network, has been out this summer very busy installing weather stations. And so you'll see this map is a little more full week by week. The website there, mesonet.sdstate.edu, is at the top. So go there for the live updates. And I know temperatures were 100 plus in the south, and they had pretty decent south winds at like 15 to 20 plus miles an hour. So pretty hot and breezy down there in the south today. Don't expect those really hot temperatures. After tomorrow, things will cool down a little bit, and then see another warm bump next week. But check out that mesonet for up-to-date weather information every 5 minutes. We've got rainfall, we got cameras, we got temperature, heat index, wind chill, all the good stuff. So please check that out. And with that, that's all I have. There might be some questions in chat.
Yep, we
okay.
do have some questions, Laura, and I amend what I was excited for. I think the best news you gave me was that we may not have a super early frost, which is music to my ears as I think about some of our fall crop harvests. Yes, so the first question for you, I know you touched a little bit on El Nino, but maybe you could expand on that further. You know, what is the El Nino prediction, and what does that truly mean for us as we look at fall and winter here in South Dakota?
Yep, so the indicators that we look at for El Nino are the ocean temperatures in the Pacific. And some of those zones over the equator are exceptionally warm for this time of year, like really, really warm. And this is true of the global oceans also, but very warm. And so they're expecting El Nino to reach what they consider strength at some point this season. But the little kind of caveat with that is that just because the El Nino indicator by the sea surface temperatures in the ocean show strong, that doesn't always necessarily translate to a strong impact here in the US. So just because it's strong in the ocean doesn't always mean it's strong here over the middle of the continent in North America. Let's see. Michael had a question about the heat that we're in the middle of, the effect on crop production. You know, I think the moisture we've had lately will help things carry through. I think we have pretty decent soil moisture. Looking at the mesonet, we do have some shallow soils in the center of the state that are drying out. But you know, given how deep roots are now at this time of year also, I think they can weather it pretty well. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, at this point for the field crops, we're looking at grain fill. How big is the grain going to be? So corn kernels and soybeans, how big are they going to be? So I think that could affect a little bit there.
And I'll just add, as we look at some of our fruiting crops, so our cucumbers, our melons, you know, granted, all of us are probably sick of zucchini anyway, so maybe this isn't a bad thing, but our peppers, our tomatoes, as we, you know, if we sit over 90 degrees consistently, and especially with those night temperatures not dropping, we are going to see some of our fruiting vegetables in our gardens drop some flowers, or you might see really small looking fruit that drops from the plant. So we might see some fruit abortion as a result of the heat, but just know, again, there should be subsequent flowers and subsequent tomatoes and more zucchini to follow if we don't have an early frost.
Yep.
Laura, I'll pitch it back to you for the hurricane question. I like that one.
Oh, yep. Does increasingly active hurricane season affect our weather patterns? Potentially. So this time of year in the summer, we get a lot of our moisture from the Gulf, from what they call low-level jet stream. Coming up from the south. And so if they get a real strong hurricane come up, say through Texas, depending on how far it tracks, you know, west before it moves out to the east, that could potentially affect our weather here. But generally, not too much. But what's really unusual is that tropical storm that just came on shore in California. We rarely see that. Last time they had a hurricane or a tropical storm like that was 1939, I believe, on the California coast. So that's something that's really different that we don't typically see. But again, I don't know that that will affect us too much here in South Dakota.
All right. And Laura, our last question for you before we transition speakers. How can people get their community connected to the Mesonet?
Okay, a great question. And so, yeah, they're still looking for station hosts. They want to build that network out to a station about every 25 miles or 50 miles. So go to the Mesonet website. I don't know if someone put that in the chat yet. And up at the top, they have a tab or a topic called hosting, that's station hosting. And there's more information on what kind of sites they're looking for and how to contact them and some of their frequently asked questions. So that's probably the best place to find out.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Laura. And I know you'll hang out with us a little bit longer. So if people think of more questions, please drop those in the Q&A and maybe Laura can type in an answer for you. Amanda, we're going to welcome you to the floor.
All right, let me find my share screen button. Okay, so you guys should see my monarch migration. Figured I'd start out with the cool fun insects that everyone really likes. The monarch butterflies are on the move. I have still had a couple eggs and caterpillars showing up here in Pierre. So the monarchs that are around right now are sort of just continually laying eggs. It's going to be sort of the angle of the sun and day length that triggers the caterpillars that are developing right now to head south. So you can see on this map, it's from journeynorth.org, and that's where you can track the monarch migration. You can also submit observations. So for those of you in the northern sort of tier of South Dakota, if you start seeing big groups of monarchs roosting in trees, that's what Journey North wants to know about as they track the migration. Also, if you're somebody who is maybe monarch tagging, you want to be starting to keep an eye out because the monarchs that are coming through, throw a sticker on them, odds are good that they are going to go to Mexico. So I know we've got some events coming up, and I realized I forgot to delete an event that happened off of my slides. Oh well. But I know at Insect Fest, we're going to have people tagging monarch butterflies at McCrory Gardens. So on September 9th, you can come out and give that a try with us. But yeah, the monarchs are on the move. Make sure you're watering those fall flowers. There's a picture of sedum right there with a monarch on it. I know here in Pierre, even though it says Hughes County isn't in drought, we've got some trees that are showing some drought stress from earlier in the summer. So I know I've started, I was kind of late in watering some of my trees, and I've been trying to catch up on that so that they have a little bit of a better shot this fall. But make sure that you're still watering, even if it looks like we're not in drought, because yeah, right now we do have a lot of high temperatures, and those are taking up a lot of plant resources. So the migrating monarchs need something to eat on their way. So get your mums out there, your asters, your sedums, and make sure that they are flowering through September and hopefully to our late frost. And it is still mosquito season. So here in Pierre, we, over the past about 2-ish weekends, we got about an inch of rain each weekend, which was really great. And yes, I too have had to mow more than last year. But that also means that like when I got back from my travels to Des Moines, walked outside and it was just mosquitoes they came in. And everyone was like, oh man, like, why are there mosquitoes all of a sudden? Well, there's mosquitoes all of a sudden because in a lot of places we have been getting sort of more frequent and consistent rainfall, which means that there's a lot of places out there for mosquitoes to still be breeding and active. So the downside of a late frost is that the insects like mosquitoes and things like West Nile virus season are going to be hanging out with us a little bit longer. So do make sure that you are wearing your EPA approved active ingredient insect repellent. And just, you can alter your activity to avoid dusk and dawn when the vector mosquitoes are at their hungriest. And also, wear long pants and long sleeves, which in 90 degrees is kind of hard to do sometimes. A quick update about West Nile virus cases in South Dakota as of August 16th. So the count from last week, we have about 14 cases in the state. So that's still pretty low considering some of our numbers in previous years. But Department of Health, their prediction model says that we're in for a moderate West Nile virus year, which absolutely could be the case, especially if that fall frost doesn't come until later to kill the mosquitoes. So wear your repellent. Also take a look around your yard. If you've got things that are collecting water that you haven't emptied in a while, maybe tip those out so there's not quite as many breeding locations for mosquitoes as we move into the fall. What to do about wasps? This is another one with a later fall frost. We're going to be seeing our wasp friends for a little bit longer this season. My advice now is to wait for that fall freeze. I always get questions this time of year for people who are like, oh, I just noticed these wasps. How do I get rid of them? And really, you don't. This is a pretty high risk time of year because the colonies are for the social wasps, like the European paper wasps, which are pictured here at my place. These ladies are doing some great pest control work for me and also a little bit of home security work. But the European paper wasps, the yellow jackets, those colonies are at their maximum strength this time of year. So they've got lots of workers that are guarding the colonies. And if you approach them on a 95-degree day with a can of wasp spray, you are going to get stung. This is not, if they escape detection for this long, just let them go until it freezes. Or call a professional. They've got some access to, some different products, some different application techniques. But this is not one to tackle yourself. Just wait it out, and then next spring, sort of take note of those areas where you've seen wasps using those resources to nest, and do a little bit of the home repairs. This is a shutter on my house, so it's kind of hard to like block off the back of the shutter, but like I know that they use it, and so I kind of plan accordingly. But if you're seeing, wasps in your mailbox or above your door, those are areas to keep an eye out for and be knocking off or dealing with those nests when they are small in the spring and it's cooler. So don't get out there, especially don't get out there on a ladder and get yourself stung this time of year. I wanted to call out a pretty cool insect that I hung out with earlier this month when I was out in Huron at the Magatahopi Nature Preserve for a field trip with the master naturalists, but got to hang out with some of the mound or thatch ants. And the image on the right is their part of their nest. You can kind of see where some of the ants were like running in and out if you look for that sort of like orangish red head. But these are pretty large. They're not quite as big as carpenter ants, but they're a pretty big ant. And they will sort of like build these soil mounds and cover the top with, essentially like grass that they've clipped off. So you end up with these sort of like big mounds with a bunch of clipped grass on top of it. Kind of looks a little bit wild. And in previous years, I've run across these in pastures. They do a great job of, eating grubs and some other things in the soil. Ants are omnivorous. They're also social. So this is another one where odds of you winning against them outside are very slim. And you can see the picture on the left is a close-up of the ant. I was letting it bite me with its chewing mouth parts so I could get a better picture of it. But you can see they've got that sort of red head and thorax and then a black abdomen. But if you have these out in your lawn or in like sort of a large, pasture or mowed area, sometimes people will think that knocking down the nest is the way to go, and that is not the way to go, because if you disturb their mound, they will just make new ones. So it's kind of like cutting the head off of a hydra. Instead of one mound, you'll end up with 2 or 3. So this is one that if they're sort of out of the way location, just let them do their thing and enjoy the fact that they're eating things out of the soil for you. They're picking up weed seeds, eating some of those soil dwelling insects that can sometimes be pesty. But if you may see an insect or an ant with a red head, it might be one of our mound or our thatch ants. And as far as upcoming events, I realized it, oh, hey, Bugapalooza happened, so ignore that, pretend I deleted it. But State Fair, I did see in the chat that somebody asked what the forecast was going to be. I am curious as well, because I will be there on August 31st and September 1st in the Hort building giving talks, but the Hort building will be open all through the fair with a schedule of presentations, as well as a Master Gardener booth where you can stop and ask them questions. And then sort of my last in-person insect outreach event of the season is Insect Fest on September 9th in Brookings at McCrory Garden. So that's a free day at the garden. Great time to come out and see us, learn about all things insects, pick up some of our new publications, bring the kids. We'll have stickers. There'll be edible insects. There'll be the cockroach races. So that'll be a good time. But that is what I've got tonight. And I will turn it back over to Kristine.
All right, thank you so much, Amanda. And I am just gonna walk us through a few things that are going on in the field and the garden, because I realize it's been a while since I've seen all of you. And Amanda, I know one more event where people are gonna see you after Insect Fest. So I'll share that as well. All right. So my team, as you can tell from listening to Joslyn visit tonight with all of you as we look forward to cabbage harvest, my team has been really, really busy. One of the things that we are looking forward to next week is onion harvest. And some of you might have already harvested your onions, and some of you might be wondering, when in the world should I be harvesting those onions? So the threshold we're looking for our storage onions for Hannah Voy's research project, and I should have put an arrow in here, but if you look at that far left row where you can see a lot of those leaves are starting to drop on those onions, that is not a bad thing. That's nothing that we did wrong in the field that I know of. That is a sign that those onions are starting to dry down and starting to close off those channels to those leaves. And that's a great sign that those onions are ready to harvest. Now, depending on the literature you read, some recommendations say you want about half of those leaves to fall over before you harvest those onions for longer storage life. Our colleagues at Iowa State, they're using a threshold of 80% of those leaves falling over. And you know what? Sometimes it might just depend on when do you have time to get out there and harvest those onions. So we're going to begin, and this photo is from a couple of days ago now, but we're keeping an eye on all this onion foliage. And you can see here, I believe this is Patterson. If I've got my onions right, that's hanging on to those leaves a little bit more, and then Candy is starting to fall over. So there's a little bit of a difference in who's ready to harvest when, but we're going to be using a pitchfork and scooping all of those into bins and counting and weighing everything. And then we are going to use the netted tabletops of our greenhouse space on campus. And we're going to keep that space between 75 and 90 degrees. We're going to put some fans in there to increase airflow. And we are then going to cure those onions so that you get that complete dry down of that green foliage. And that kind of forms a seal around the top of the onion. And that's what makes them much more amenable to a longer storage life. And I know we have some more information about onions on the SDSU Extension website, so feel free to look into that with more information from Rhoda Burrows as well. I wanted to share some updates from the garden. I apologize that I wasn't able to do these sooner. I was one of those lucky folks that my orchard baby corn that you can see all 5 to 6 stalks of it nestled in my raised bed on my second-story apartment. But my corn did pollinate, and I did get a harvest. And I knew going into it that the orchard baby corn was going to be small. It's meant to be grown in containers or raised beds. So there's my hand for scale. It was quite delicious. I'm going to be honest. I nibbled it off the ear raw. I didn't even bother cooking it. So if you're going for a large corn harvest, orchard baby might not be for you, but if you're growing in a small space and would like to grow corn for the sake of growing corn, it might be worth a try. It was certainly something fun to have in my garden this year. And I had shared about 2 months ago now that I was trialing some dwarf tomatoes, and these all came, these were gifted to me from a master gardener in Minnehaha County. and she had secured her seed from Victory Seed Company. And these are the 3 slicing tomatoes that are fruiting for me. And all of the plants have thick, lush leaves, have been really healthy, seem to be undeterred by the drought. I'm very, very, very impressed with the plant performance. And all of these tomatoes will fit easily in the palm of my hand. Some of them have been a little bit smaller, but they've been nice slicers. And I'm someone who doesn't worry about only using aroma type tomato for canning. So I've already stewed and boiled some of these down to make sauces and contribute to chilies. And they have all been absolutely delicious. The Adelaide, I like that one. It's got a little bit more striping, and that one seems to be setting fruit a little bit later than the Baronia or the Tasmanian chocolate. And the other dwarf tomato I planted was the dwarf Eagle Smiley, which is a yellow cherry tomato. And that is one, at least in my situation, that has been anything but dwarf because it's almost as tall as I am now. So that one, the jury's still out. I'm going to need to save some seeds and plant some more out next year to report back if it's truly a dwarfing tomato. But these 3 have been delicious and great, and I look forward to saving seeds from them this year. And just wanted to share, as we think about weather and keeping things watered, these are trailing moss roses in my raised beds, and the name of the game has been keep them deadheaded. So if you have things that are starting to peter out, especially in this heat, deadhead them, trim them back, give them a chance to have a second or third or fourth or fifth life yet this season. I find deadheading moss roses to be really therapeutic because you snap those little succulent seed heads right off of there and it makes a satisfying pop. And you're rewarded a week or so later with another really beautiful flush of blooms. So keep on top of deadheading and you'll be rewarded through the fall. All right. As we wrap up this episode of Garden Hour, I want to let you know that there's an opportunity to catch myself and Dr. Madeline Shires tomorrow morning, thankfully, not tomorrow afternoon, but we're going to be at the SDSU Southeast Research Farm in Beersford, South Dakota, so Joslyn's home base, and we're going to be talking about corn and melon diseases. And this is a fun pairing of, we've invited row crop farmers and fruit and vegetable farmers and gardeners to all come out, because the great thing or unfortunate thing is a lot of the diseases that affect our agronomic corn crop also affect our sweet corn crop. So Dr. Madeline Shires is going to be our expert in that regard. And we are also going to use my melon fields. I have melons growing both in the field and in a high tunnel at the Southeast Farm. And we've seen some fun and funky diseases pop up this year. So we're going to use that as a lesson learned. And because it's a 100-degree day, what would be better than ending with a melon taste test? So we're not going to give you a full lunch, but we'll give you a few slices of melon to test. We have 4 different varieties that we're trialing, and that way you have a chance to see which one you like best. And if you're not able to join us in person for that disease workshop, but you're seeing funky, unexplained things going on in your fields, or your gardens, I just want to remind everyone that we do have our plant diagnostic clinic, and Madeline Shires and Connie Tandy are happy to assist you with any and all of your plant problems. And as promised, there is another spot where you'll get to see myself, Amanda Bachman, and Laura Edwards in person. And that is going to be at the 3rd annual Specialty Crop Field Day. That's going to be Tuesday, September 12th from 4 to 7 p.m. And that is on the SDSU campus. We don't have a physical address for our field yet, but if you go directly east of the Oscar Larson Performing Arts Center, there will be lots of signs with arrows that say field day this way. And we continue to expand that event. So this year, the graduate students are going to be giving a tour of their research fields. We have a new high tunnel that you can just barely see in the background of this photo. I'll be giving a tour of that and explaining some of the things about how to build a high tunnel. Meanwhile, inside in our presentation shed, if you will, we'll have educational exhibitors from many parts of campus, And we'll have wonderful speakers, including Amanda Bachman, Laura Edwards, Madeline Shires. Joslyn's going to be giving a demonstration on how to build a drip irrigation system and burn and prepare landscape fabric. So it'll be a full 3 hours. There will be an opportunity to catch different half-hour presentations, and we'll be offering our field tour in 2 different rotations. So if you can't get off work right away, but you can get there by 6 o'clock, there'd still be plenty of action for you to get in on. So we'd love to see you on campus. And by golly, that has taken us up to the top of the hour. So with that, I want to thank all of our panelists tonight. Thank you, Joslyn. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you, Laura. And a reminder that next week, same time, same place, will be our last regularly scheduled garden hour of the season. But you can always reach out to our garden hotline. We have Aberdeen, Pierre, Rapid City, and Sioux Falls. And you can also subscribe to our SDSU Extension newsletter, which will be distributed through at least the end of October. So there will be lots of ways to stay in touch with us. And we'll be releasing an off-season garden hour schedule as well. So just know that you'll still see plenty of us. All right. Have a great night, everyone, and we'll see you again next week.